I don't know what it was. A dream within a dream? A projection of some part of me, a warning, maybe? I've read theories about doppelgangers appearing during altered states of consciousness. In folklore, seeing your own double is a bad omen. Some say it means death. Others think it's your subconscious trying to show you something you're not ready to confront. But honestly, it didn't feel like a warning. It felt like a visit, from me to me. Welcome to Dark Reddit, your late-night escape into eerie calm. I'm Alex, your voice in the dark and your guide through the unknown. This is Podcast 15, a shadowy chapter in our ever-growing collection of sleepless nights. Tonight's journey spans 1 hour, a series of chilling tales whispered into your ears softly, slowly, designed to help your mind drift while the darkness unfolds around you. Before we begin, I'd like to say thank you for the love you all show on my last video. Your appreciation truly motivates me to keep creating more content. Now please find a quiet, comfortable place to rest. Dim the lights, silence your world, and take one slow, steady breath. Now close your eyes. Every story in tonight's episode is new, uncharted, untold, and unearthed from the darker corners of Reddit. Tales of strangers, shadows, and things that don't always stay in the past. Let your body grow heavy. Let your thoughts drift. You don't need to watch. You only need to listen. You're safe here. Now, let the night begin. Some ghosts make noise, some appear, and some just never leave. This story is about a hallway phantom who made himself known on the regular, and a smoky bedroom that no window or air purifier could ever seem to fix. It's about the weird ways spirits linger in spaces, and how sometimes you just learn to live around them. The first place that really made me believe was my old one-bedroom apartment. Nothing too flashy, decent rent, hardwood floors that creaked in all the right places, a small balcony that caught the light just right at sunset. It had character. It also had a ghost. Not the kind of ghost that spooked you out of the room or made you fear for your life. No, this guy was habitual, predictable, practically part of the furniture after a while, but still undeniably there. Every night, once it got dark, not pitch black, just dim enough outside that the streetlights kicked on, he'd start walking from the bedroom to the bathroom, over and over. A tall, older man, built like a grandpa who used to be sturdy but had grown a little soft around the edges. Always in the same outfit: slacks, white shirt, suspenders, no shoes. Just walking, and then back again, and again, and again. I couldn't see him head on. It was always from the corner of my eye, that weird little place in your peripheral vision where ghosts like to hang out. First, it scared the hell out of me. You're home alone, you look over your shoulder, and there's a person crossing your hallway. That's enough to make your heart stop. But once I realized he wasn't malevolent, just restless, I kind of made peace with it. That didn't mean I stopped warning people, though. I got into the habit. Hey, just so you know, you're probably going to see a ghost tonight. It became part of the routine. I'd say it as casually as offering someone a drink. Every time they'd brush it off, maybe laugh, maybe give me that sure, buddy look. But inevitably, in the middle of a conversation, beer in hand, mid-sentence, they'd freeze. Holy shit. I just saw a ghost. Yeah, no shit. I warned you. He became part of the lore of the place. Friends would come over just hoping to catch a glimpse. "Did the hallway guy show up yet?" they'd ask. "What time does the ghost clock in?" It was funny until the one time he got a little too close. I was in the bathroom brushing my teeth, minding my business, when I saw movement in the mirror. That classic horror movie moment. I turned around, and sure enough, he was halfway through the door. He wasn't walking into the bathroom. It was like he was just there, phasing in, or maybe just hadn't realized I was in there. But this time, something different happened. As I turned and looked straight at him, he froze. His form shimmered, sort of rippling like a heat wave, and then, poof, he dissolved into mist. Gone. Just like that. I stood there with my toothbrush hanging out of my mouth, heart pounding, trying to make sense of it. That was the closest he'd ever come. And the first time he'd noticed me noticing him. I moved out not too long after that. Life stuff, better job, new neighborhood, change of pace. The ghost didn't follow me, but the idea that some places are just thin stuck with me. Fast forward a few years. I'm married now. My wife and I live in a 3-bedroom house. Solid, suburban, pretty standard stuff. But of course, nothing is ever just normal for long. This house? Whole different flavor of haunted. It's the master bedroom. We made the mistake of trying to make that our sleeping space when we first moved in. Nice room, bigger closet, good light. But after the first couple nights, we started noticing something weird. We'd wake up coughing. Not just a little dry throat thing, like coughing your lungs out kind of stuff. Every night, like clockwork, sometime between 3 and 3:30 a.m., the room would be filled with the sharp, stale stench of cigarette smoke. Heavy, lingering, like someone had been chain smoking in there for hours with the windows closed. We don't smoke. No one does. The house is sealed up tight at night. No smell anywhere else. Just the bedroom. Only between those hours. We tried everything. Air purifiers, salt lamps, saging the room. Nothing helped. We even called someone to check the ducts. "Your ventilation's fine," they said. "You sure it's not someone smoking outside?" "Nope, not possible." After a couple of months, we gave up. Hauled our futon into the living room and started sleeping there. We felt a little ridiculous at first. 2 grown adults, camping out in the main space like teenagers crashing after a movie night. But you know what? The coughing stopped. The smoke disappeared. We still keep that bedroom closed. Guests sometimes mention it. "Why don't you sleep upstairs?" We just say it's a storage room now. Easier than explaining that the ghosts in that room really liked Marlboros. Weirdest part? I never see them. Not like the hallway man. But I feel them. The room always feels occupied. And not in a warm, cozy grandma's been here kind of way. More like, you're borrowing this space and we're watching. I sometimes wonder if that's how it's going to be for us. Just living around ghosts. Coexisting. Like they're part of the deal. You get love, a house, a dog someday maybe, and a couple of lingering spirits who just refuse to leave. People talk about ghosts like they're horror movie villains. But in my experience, they're more like roommates with really bad boundaries. They've got routines, habits, personalities even. Some of them walk hallways out of memory. Some can't put down their cigarettes, even in death. And some of them, maybe, are just trying to remind us that time doesn't move the same for everyone. Not in every place. So yeah, I've seen a ghost, lived with one, slept on the living room floor to avoid others. And honestly, at this point, if I move again and don't get a haunted house, I might actually be disappointed. Some college houses are known for wild parties. Ours was known for something else entirely. This story is about a haunted house in a sleepy college town. A house that didn't want us there, but also didn't want to be empty. It was about sleep paralysis, flickering lights, perfume from another era, and a basement that seemed to have a life of its own. Most of all, this story is about how I became the last man standing in a house that didn't want to let us go without leaving a mark. You'd think the scariest part of college would be finals, debt, or heartbreak. For me, it was surviving a house that seemed to breathe when you weren't listening. It was an old house, tucked away a few blocks from campus. Weathered paint, sagging porch, creaky steps. The kind of place you expect students to rent because it's cheap, not because it's nice. There were 5 of us in the beginning. Young, broke, optimistic. But within months, that number dwindled. People started making up reasons to leave, but deep down, I think we all knew why. That house didn't want us there. At least not all of us. The weird stuff started subtly. Lost items. Doors creaking open that we knew we closed. Lights that flickered just a bit too often. We joked about it. Called it the old lady ghost after one night when the entire place was suddenly filled with the overwhelming scent of floral perfume. The kind only someone born before 1940 would wear. We didn't take it seriously at first. But then came the night I woke up at exactly 3 a.m. to the sound of my roommate's door slamming open and shut. Over and over again. Half asleep and pissed off, I yelled, "Dude, knock it off." That's when I remembered I was alone. My roommate had gone home for the weekend. The slamming stopped immediately. I held my breath, frozen in bed. That's when I heard another sound. A subtle, rhythmic clack, clack, clack. The hippie bead curtain I had outside my door, which was closed, started swinging violently against the frame. Not randomly. It was almost like someone was pacing on the other side, brushing against it over and over again. For 30 straight minutes, it didn't stop. I lay there curled in the fetal position, debating whether to throw myself out the window. I didn't sleep that night. Then came the night of the Nintendo. It was our old console, shoved out on the back porch where we kept some junk and secondhand furniture. Again, it was 3 a.m., and I woke to that iconic 8-bit music, loud, cheerful, completely out of place. I assumed someone broke in. I grabbed a bat and walked toward the back room, heart pounding. The closer I got, the louder it got. But when I opened the door, silence. Not just quiet, the kind of silence that presses on your eardrums. The TV was off. The porch was empty, and the air smelled like perfume again. I started warning people when they came over. Most didn't believe me until I decided to prove it. "All right, ghost," I said in front of a group of skeptical friends. "Do anything to show you're here." The house answered. Every light began to flicker. Kitchen, hallway, bathroom, bedrooms, all strobing like a horror movie. In the middle of the day, it lasted nearly a minute. We just stood there, stunned. One of my friends left and refused to come back. Everyone who stayed over more than a night experienced sleep paralysis. Sometimes just once. Others repeatedly. They'd describe a heavy pressure on their chest, a shadow in the room, or hearing whispers just out of reach. They didn't stay long after that. One of the more unnerving features of the house was the basement. There was a hidden door in the floor of the living room, covered by a rug. We didn't use the basement much. It was damp, cold, and felt like the kind of place someone might have been locked in 100 years ago. But weirdly, whenever something went missing, headphones, textbooks, a favorite hoodie, we'd later find it on the coal chute in the basement. Every single time. It's like the house was playing hide and seek. My roommate started seeing things too. One night, while playing video games, he saw mist drift from the kitchen into the bathroom. Not fog, not smoke. Mist, like the kind you see over lakes in the morning. The bathroom, of course, had a trapdoor to the attic. That was her space. We never went up there. Another time, my roommate was turning off the lights and locking up. As he turned away from the living room, someone whispered directly into his ear. A slow, breathy HAA. He thought it was me playing a prank, until he saw me sound asleep on the couch. He didn't turn off the lights that night, or the TV. He just ran to his room, slammed the door, and didn't come out until morning. We heard noises constantly, thumping in the attic, whispered voices that would wake us up. Once, I even thought I heard a woman humming. I started spending a lot of early mornings on the porch, waiting for the sky to turn pink before I dared go back inside. When everyone else finally left, one by one, citing work, relationships, or just needing a change, it was just me and that same roommate. We were too stubborn or stupid to leave. Maybe both. But honestly, felt like the house wanted it that way. The scariest part? Years later, I met a guy who had rented a different house from the same landlord. Same town, different street. He told me it was haunted too. All his roommates left. He had sleep paralysis there. His stuff kept disappearing. And the kicker? Every time something weird happened, he told me, the whole place smelled like strong, old lady perfume. That's when I stopped laughing about it. I don't know if the ghost followed the landlord, or if it was a coincidence. Maybe the houses were built over something, or maybe she just never wanted to be alone. All I know is I've never smelled that perfume again, and I hope I never do. Some things can't be explained, but not everything that's unexplained is evil. This story is about an invisible tug, a frightened cat, and a little ghost girl who might just have wanted a friend. I've always been a skeptic. Ghost stories were for sleepovers, horror movies, and people who wanted attention. Even when weird things happened, a door slamming with no breeze, a misplaced object showing up in the fridge, I chalked it up to forgetfulness or bad hinges. But you know what they say, it's all fun and games until it happens in your house. The day I saw our cat get pulled backward across the floor, with nothing and no one touching her, was the day I stopped scoffing. We have 2 cats, both rescues, both weird in their own endearing ways. They'd gotten used to the occasional odd noise or flickering light in our old house. Honestly, so had we. It's an older home, a little creaky, a little drafty. The kind of place you buy because it has character, which is real estate code for, this place might be haunted, but we're not saying that on paper. But things in our house had always felt benign, quirky if anything, occasionally unsettling, but never dangerous. Then one afternoon, I was sitting in the kitchen scrolling through my phone when our cat Marnie strutted through the dining area. She was just doing cat stuff. Tail high, ears relaxed, not a care in the world. And then it happened. It was so quick and so quiet, but so unmistakably wrong. She started sliding backward. Slowly at first, then with more force about 5 feet straight back. Her tail was pulled straight out behind her, and her back paws scrabbled for traction on the hardwood floor. She wasn't slipping or backing up on her own. She was being pulled. There was no one there. I was the only person in the room. I jumped up so fast I knocked my chair over. Marnie yowled. Not her usual meow, but a panicked, guttural shriek, and bolted toward the couch, crashing into the leg of the coffee table before disappearing underneath. I stood there stunned, every hair on my arms standing on end. For just a second, I thought I saw something, not a full figure, but maybe a flicker of movement in the air, like heat haze or a smudge in a mirror that wasn't there before. Then it was gone. Marnie stayed under the couch for the rest of the day. Now, here's the thing. That wasn't the first weird thing that had happened in the house. Not by a long shot, but it was the most unexplainable. And it was the first time I really thought, about what might actually be living in our home besides us and the cats. Because the truth is, I'd always had a strange feeling about the upstairs hallway. I never liked walking through it at night, not because it was scary exactly, but because it felt watched. The kind of feeling you get when a child is hiding behind a curtain trying to spook you. That odd, mischievous energy. Harmless, maybe, but curious. Intent. And then I remembered something else. A few months earlier, I had been reorganizing an old bookshelf in the spare bedroom. The room we never used, the one that always felt a few degrees colder than the rest of the house. While pulling out a stack of old cookbooks left by the previous owner, a small photo fell out between the pages and fluttered to the floor. It was a sepia-toned picture, old and faded. A little girl, no more than 5, in a white dress with lace trim and bows in her hair, standing next to a rocking chair. She looked directly into the camera with a sort of solemn curiosity. On the back of the photo, written in pencil, was the name Clara, 1908. I tucked the picture into a drawer and forgotten about it. Until now, the pieces started to click. The faint sound of giggles when the house was empty. The small footprints I'd seen once in the dust near the attic stairs and assumed were from a raccoon, even though they were barefoot and human-shaped. The perfume, not like an old lady's, but like baby powder and something floral and sweet. And then, of course, the cat. After Marnie's incident, I did some digging. I combed through property records, talked to a neighbor who had lived on the block since the 70s, and even stopped by the local library for old newspaper clippings. That's how I found out about Clara. She had lived in our house with her parents, back when the town was still mostly farmland. Her mother died of influenza in 1910, and Clara followed just a few years later, at the age of 6. The obituary said she died peacefully in her sleep. No mention of where in the house, but I already knew. The spare room. I found the photo again and placed it on the mantel. And I started talking to her. Not in a big seance kind of way, just casually. "Morning, Clara," I'd say when I came downstairs. "Don't scare the cats, okay?" I started leaving out small toys on the floor. A marble, a wooden spinning top, an old doll I found at an antique shop. Sometimes I'd find them moved, sometimes not. But the weirdest part? After I started acknowledging her, the house felt lighter. I wouldn't say the activity stopped, but it changed. The cats stopped avoiding certain rooms. The hallway didn't feel as heavy at night. Marnie even started sleeping on the stairs again, the same spot she'd always avoided since the tail-pulling incident. It's been a few years now, and Clara's still with us. At least I think she is. Sometimes, late at night, I'll hear soft footsteps upstairs. And every once in a while, the cat toys are rearranged in odd little circles. I like to think she just wanted someone to notice her, someone to play with, maybe even a friend. So now every morning I say hello, and every night I say good night. And I always tell guests before they visit, there's a little girl in the house. Don't worry, she's friendly. Just don't tug the cat's tail. Not all nightmares end when you wake up. This story is about sleep paralysis and seeing a version of myself, someone I knew too well and not at all, sitting quietly at the edge of my bed. I've had sleep paralysis since I was a teenager, though it didn't start often. Just now and then, like a bad thunderstorm rolling through in the night, I'd wake up frozen, unable to move or speak, feeling like something or someone was sitting on my chest. Sometimes it felt like hands around my neck, gently but firmly pressing me into the mattress. Like whatever was in the room with me wasn't angry, just assertive. Most people say they see a shadow figure or some kind of demon crouched over them when it happens. I never did. That made it almost worse, like I was waiting for something that never came. I'd lie there paralyzed, heart pounding, eyes wide open, and see absolutely nothing. But I always felt something, presence, like someone standing just outside my peripheral vision, watching me. Still, I learned to live with it. I'd write out the episodes, remind myself it was all in my head, and try not to freak out when I woke up gasping. I never really talked about it. Most people just nod and say, "Oh, that sounds awful," and change the subject. You get used to bottling it up. But one night, everything changed. It was late, probably around 2 a.m., and I'd fallen asleep with the lights still on. Not something I usually do. I'd been up reading in bed and must have nodded off without realizing. When I woke up, I knew immediately I was in it again. My body was completely frozen. My chest was heavy, my breathing shallow. The usual dread was there, thick and pressing. But something was different. There was someone sitting on the edge of the bed. Not standing in the corner, not in the hallway. Right there, just a couple of feet away from me. And I could see her clearly. She looked like me. At first, I thought I was dreaming. I mean, what else could it be? But I could feel the mattress dipping slightly where she sat. Could see the soft fabric of her t-shirt bunching around her arms. My t-shirt, one I'd had for over a decade, gray and a little stretched out at the collar. I used to wear it all the time in college. She wasn't facing me. She was angled slightly away, sitting quietly with her hands in her lap. Her head was bowed a little, like she was lost in thought. I couldn't see her face fully, but from what I could make out, she looked concerned. That was the weirdest part. She didn't look malicious or threatening, just worried, like she wanted to help but didn't know how. I tried to move, tried to speak, but my body wouldn't cooperate. My jaw was locked tight, fingers numb, legs stiff. I remember trying to will myself to blink faster, to do something that might break whatever spell I was under. But she didn't move. She just sat there, silent, as the seconds stretched into what felt like hours. And then, slowly, she stood up. She didn't walk away or disappear. She just faded, dissolved right there in front of me, like smoke vanishing into the air. When I could finally move again, I shot straight up in bed, my skin clammy and cold despite the warmth of the room. The lights were still on, casting a soft yellow glow across the blankets. The air felt normal, but I wasn't. I stayed up the rest of the night, back pressed against the headboard, staring at the spot where she'd sat. I couldn't bring myself to touch the t-shirt, which was folded on the dresser across the room. I hadn't worn it in a while, but it had been one of my favorites. It still smelled like the old laundry soap I used to use. After that night, I folded it and put it in the bottom drawer, underneath some sweaters I rarely wore. I never touched it again. I've had sleep paralysis episodes since then, but nothing like that night. Nothing where I saw myself. I don't know what it was. A dream within a dream? A projection of some part of me, a warning, maybe? I've read theories about doppelgangers appearing during altered states of consciousness. In folklore, seeing your own double is a bad omen. Some say it means death. Others think it's your subconscious trying to show you something you're not ready to confront. But honestly, it didn't feel like a warning. It felt like a visit, from me to me, like some version of myself from another time. Maybe from when I used to wear that shirt when life felt simpler and less heavy, came back just to check in. Just to say, I see you. I know it's hard right now. You're not alone. Sounds crazy, I know, but I've come to accept that not everything has a neat answer. Some things live in the space between waking and dreaming, between fear and comfort. And maybe that's where she came from, the version of me that still remembered what it was like to be fearless, sitting beside the version of me who forgot. These days, I still get the occasional sleep paralysis episode, but I haven't seen her again. Sometimes, when I'm half asleep and the shadows of the room begin to stretch and shift, I wonder if she'll come back, if she ever needs to. And when I pass by the bottom drawer, I sometimes pause. The shirt is still there, still folded, still untouched. Part of me doesn't want to throw it out. Like if I do, I'll lose whatever fragile connection there was that night. Or maybe I'm just not ready to let her go. Some things you forget, others remember for you. This story is about a little kid who saw something they shouldn't have been able to describe, and the ghost of a war that never quite left the room. I don't remember the man in the closet. Not really. Not in any concrete way, at least. What I do remember is the feeling. The way the air in my childhood bedroom used to get thick and heavy as night fell. Especially when the closet door was left open just a crack. I remember how I would press my face into my pillow and try not to look, like somehow the dark couldn't see me if I didn't see it. But the details? Those come from my parents. They say I used to come running into their room, crying and shaking, saying that there was a man in my closet, not a monster, not an imaginary friend, a man. And I'd say it with the kind of certainty that makes parents sit up straight in bed. What really got them, though, was how I described him. He wore a gray coat, I said. He had a dirty hat and a scruffy face. And apparently I once said quite plainly that he looked like a Civil War soldier. I was 4 years old. There's no way I should have known what a Civil War soldier looked like. I couldn't read. I hadn't seen any movies like that. My parents weren't history buffs. And yet, there I was, giving accurate details of a man who sounded like he'd just stepped out of 1863 and into my closet. At first, they chalked it up to dreams. Kids have vivid imaginations, after all. But it happened more than once. For a couple of months, like clockwork, I'd come into their room crying. And it wasn't just a scared kid cry. It was the kind of raw, panicked sobbing that makes you think something really happened. Then one night, I told them he spoke to me. That was the turning point. Apparently, I said he stood in the doorway of the closet and said, "Don't be afraid. I'm just watching." And that his voice was tired. My mom said that was the moment she realized this wasn't just a phase or a nightmare. She and my dad did some digging. Our house was old, not ancient, but definitely pre-1900s. Tucked in a quiet town in Pennsylvania, it had the kind of creaky floorboards and low ceilings that feel like they were made to hold stories. My parents started researching the area, talking to a couple of local historians, even digging through old property records. That's when they found out the previous owners had discovered Civil War artifacts buried in the backyard. Buttons, belt buckles, and a rusted piece of what might have been a rifle bayonet. The house sat just a few miles from what used to be a major route for troop movements during the war. And here's the wildest part. The room that was mine had originally been a storage room. One that, according to old blueprints, had a built-in closet with a peculiar cutout in the back wall, right where I said the man would stand. After learning that, my parents didn't tell me anything. I was too young to understand, and they didn't want to feed the fear. But they did quietly start doing things to make the room feel lighter. My mom put a little night light in the corner. My dad closed the closet every night and placed a small wooden cross above the doorway. He never said why. Eventually, I stopped seeing the man. I stopped waking them up. Faded. But the story stuck around. They brought it up years later when I was in high school, sitting around the dinner table one night during a blackout, swapping creepy stories. My mom looked at me and said, "You used to see a Civil War soldier in your closet, remember?" And suddenly all the feelings came rushing back. The dread, the heavy air, the sense of being watched. I didn't remember the man himself, not his face or his voice, but I remembered how he made me feel. Not angry, not evil, just present and tired, like he didn't want to be there either, but somehow still was. Even now, as an adult, I wonder about him. Was he a real soldier? Did he die near our house? Was he looking for something he'd lost, or someone he never got to say goodbye to? Sometimes I think he just didn't know he was gone. There's something about war that scars the land long after the bodies are buried. Grief like that doesn't go quietly. Maybe he was the kind of spirit that didn't understand time anymore. Maybe I was just young and open enough to see him before the world taught me to stop looking. That house isn't ours anymore. We moved when I was 10, but I've driven by a couple of times over the years, slowing down just enough to glance up at the second-floor window that used to be mine. I wonder if the new owners have kids. If those kids have ever run crying into their parents' room, pointing at the closet and saying, "There's a man in there." I still dream about that room sometimes. In the dream, I'm always standing in the doorway. The light's off, but the closet is open, and I never go in. I just stand there frozen, waiting, not quite afraid, but not ready either. And somewhere in the dream, I always hear it. A soft voice, low and gravelly, like it hasn't been used in years, saying, "Don't be afraid. I'm just watching." Maybe he's still there. Maybe he's moved on. But I like to think that little boy me gave him something. Maybe comfort, maybe acknowledgement, maybe just a flicker of light in the dark. And in return, he gave me something too. The first story I was ever part of that didn't have an easy explanation. And those are the ones that stay with you. Some footsteps echo twice. This story is about the strange ways the past can double back, sometimes brushing shoulders with the present, and the moment when someone you love walks by, but it's not really them. My grandfather isn't the kind of man who makes things up. He's an engineer by trade, practical by nature. He reads manuals for fun and still balances his checkbook with a mechanical pencil. He's the kind of guy who, if he told you the moon was made of cheese, you'd start looking up dairy-based astronomy theories because he's just that certain. So when he told me he saw my grandmother walk past the bedroom in a nightgown one night, and then a few minutes later she entered the room from the same hallway in her usual clothes, I believed him without hesitation. It's not like she owns nightgowns. Never has. My grandma is a pajama set kind of woman. Slippers that match, hair pinned up, book in hand. The woman walking past the door that night, she wasn't in flannel. She was in something long, white, and flowing, like something out of an old movie or a memory that doesn't belong to anyone still breathing. He said he saw her walk silently past the door, heading down the hallway just before bedtime. He thought it was odd but not alarming. Maybe she was just trying something different, he thought. Maybe she was colder than usual. He kept reading his book. But then, 2 or 3 minutes later, she came into the room from the same end of the hallway, wearing her usual PJs. No nightgown, no long white sleeves trailing behind her. He looked at her and asked, half laughing, "Why did you change clothes just now?" She blinked at him. "What are you talking about?" "The nightgown," he said. "You walked by in a nightgown just a minute ago. Then you changed." She looked at him, a little confused, and said, "Han, I don't wear nightgowns. You know that." And that was that. But he couldn't shake it. Not the oddness of the clothes, not the silence of the footsteps, not even the strange weight of it. Like he'd seen a version of her that didn't belong in their world anymore. Maybe something left over, a memory burned into the floorboards, passing through again. When he told me this story, he got this faraway look in his eyes, like he was replaying the moment in his mind. Like he still wasn't sure what he'd seen, but he was sure he saw it. That same feeling, that same pause between logic and the unexplainable, was in his voice when he told me the second story. It happened in the basement of the house they've lived in for decades now. The basement is one of those wide-open, concrete-floored types with one circular wooden table in the middle, a leftover from a time when people had dinner parties with fondue and rotary phones. On that table was their old computer, the kind of desktop that hums like a refrigerator and takes 15 minutes to start up. It sat dead center on that table for years. It wasn't near the edge. It wasn't on a slope. There were no pets, no kids, no reason for it to go anywhere. But one night, they heard a crash from the basement, loud enough to shake the floorboards. Naturally, they ran down the stairs, expecting to find something like a shelf fallen or maybe a box that tipped over. Instead, they found the computer on the floor, face down, shattered screen, cables ripped out. He walked around the table in circles, inspecting the edge. There was no sign of slippage, no wobble to the wood. The table was still perfectly still. The computer had been centered. "There's no way it fell on its own," he told me. "Absolutely none." He doesn't throw the word ghost around. He's not that kind of guy. But he's also not the kind to lie, and you could hear it in his voice, the quiet frustration of someone who can't make the puzzle fit. And here's the thing, that house has always felt a little weird. Not scary, not bad, just like it's always carrying more history than it lets on. Like it holds its breath when people talk about the past. Growing up, I remember how cold the hallway got between the kitchen and the guest room, no matter what season it was. How lights would flicker once, and only once, when my grandfather walked into the room. How the floor would creak before someone walked on it, like the house already knew they were coming. And every once in a while, my grandma would get this look on her face, like she smelled something familiar, something from another time. But when you'd ask her what it was, she'd just wave her hand and say, "Oh, nothing. Just a memory, I think." Maybe the nightgown woman was a memory, a piece of my grandmother's past walking itself out one last time. Maybe the computer wasn't pushed by hands but by a presence, a protest of some kind. Maybe the house has old echoes that are louder than we think, and sometimes they push through. I've stayed over in that house a few times as an adult, and I'll be honest, I still get a little on edge walking past the basement door at night. Sometimes I'll catch myself looking down the hall, half expecting to see someone moving in white fabric. But there's something comforting about it, too. Not all ghosts are here to scare us. Some just are. They pass through, trailing stories behind them like mist. And maybe that's the part my grandfather won't say out loud. But he feels that these things aren't just strange. They're connected to the people, to the home, to the history we forget but still live inside. He never moved that table. The broken computer was replaced, but the table stayed exactly where it was, as if he didn't want to disturb whatever decided it was time for something to fall. And the hallway, the one where the nightgown woman walked twice, the doors always left just a little more open now, just in case she needs to pass by again. Not all ghosts are strangers. This story is about doubles, echoes, and the kind of mystery that sneaks in so quietly, you're left wondering if it was ever really there, or if the world slipped for a moment, just enough for something strange to walk through. I've only ever seen a ghost once. At least, I think it was a ghost. Some people see shadows. Others hear footsteps or feel cold spots. My experience? I saw someone I've known my whole life walk straight past me, and it wasn't him. Let me explain. Growing up, my family lived in a quiet house just outside the city. Not too remote, but far enough away from neighbors that things got real quiet when you were home alone. And I was home alone a lot. My parents had a habit of driving to the next city over to run errands. They'd make a whole day of it, groceries, appointments, maybe lunch or dinner, and be gone from morning to night. I didn't mind. I was old enough to stay home by myself, and I liked the solitude. A quiet house, my favorite snacks, and the TV all to myself. That was a perfect day to me. Now, our living room was set up so that you had to walk through it to get pretty much anywhere in the house. If you came in from the back door, you'd walk between the couch and the TV, cross the carpet, and either turn left to go into my parents' bedroom or right toward the hallway and front door. I was in the living room this particular afternoon. I can't remember what I was watching. Probably cartoons or reruns of unsolved mysteries. But I remember how the sun was slanting in through the blinds and how quiet the house was except for the low drone of the television. That's when my dad walked in. I saw him clearly, his posture, the way he moved. He came in through the back door, walked right across my field of vision, passed between me and the TV, and disappeared into my parents' bedroom. He didn't say a word, didn't glance at the TV, didn't look at me, just walked through like he was on autopilot. Struck me as kind of odd. Normally, he'd at least say hi or ask what I was watching, but I figured maybe he forgot something important. His wallet, his phone, whatever, and was in a rush. A few moments later, he walked back out. Same path. From their bedroom, right in front of me and out through the back door. Still didn't say a word. The whole thing was weird enough to tug at my brain, but not enough to freak me out. Not yet. I shrugged it off for a while and went back to watching TV. Maybe he was annoyed. Maybe something had happened. I figured I'd ask him when they got back. Later that evening, my parents came home, grocery bags in hand, still laughing about something that had happened at the store. He was wearing different clothes. Not wildly different, but enough that I noticed. The version of him I saw earlier had on a white t-shirt and jeans. Now he was in a dark polo and khakis. My mom looked the same. No sign they had made any stops at home. So I asked him, "Hey, what did you come home for earlier?" He looked at me, confused. "What? You came home? Like around noon or 1, I think? You walked in, went to the bedroom, then left again. I thought maybe you forgot something." He shook his head. "We never came back. We were in the city all day. Didn't even stop once." And he meant it. My mom confirmed it. They were an hour and a half away the whole time, and there would have been no reason to drive all the way home and then turn around again. I sat there for a second, thinking back to how clearly I saw him. I didn't imagine it. I wasn't half asleep. I saw him walk through that room, twice, the exact walk he always did. His gait, his height, Even the way he brushed the side of the couch with his leg like he always did when he passed by too closely. But he wasn't home. He couldn't have been. And he wasn't wearing the same clothes. That was the only time anything like that ever happened in that house. No cold spots, no flickering lights, no mysterious sounds or weird feelings. Just that one afternoon, a perfect replica of my dad walking silently through the living room. A lot of people might write that off as a dream or a weird trick of memory, but I wasn't asleep. And the feeling I had after, that low buzz of something's not right in the pit of your stomach, has stayed with me for years. So what was it? Some people talk about time slips, little rips in the fabric of reality where something from another moment bleeds through. Others say spirits can take on the appearance of someone familiar to comfort you or confuse you. Maybe it was a doppelganger. Maybe it was a piece of energy echoing through a well-worn path. But if I had to guess, it felt like a copy. Like the space was so familiar with that exact motion, my dad walking through that room, that it replayed the moment. Not out of malice, not out of intent, just because it had been imprinted into the house, into the space. A residual echo, stuck in a loop, playing through time like a broken record. Whatever it was, it didn't scare me. Not then and not now. It was just strange and deeply, deeply human. Maybe the veil between the known and the unknown is thinner than we think. Maybe people can be two places at once in a way science can't explain yet. Or maybe houses remember us in ways we'll never fully understand. All I know is that day someone walked right past me. Someone who looked exactly like my dad. And I never saw it again. But every time I hear the back door creak, I still half expect to see him pass through. Silent, purposeful, just like he did that one time when he wasn't really home. Some meetings aren't meant to happen. This story is about a choice that still gives my wife chills. A brush with someone that looked exactly like her brother. But it wasn't. Or maybe it was. Or maybe it was something else entirely, wearing his face. We all like to think the world is solid, predictable. If your brother is in the hospital, he's not downstairs in the parking lot. If you talk to someone face to face, they're real, right? That's why this story has stuck with my wife all these years. It didn't just shake her idea of what's possible. It made her wonder how close she came to something she wasn't meant to understand. Started on a totally normal afternoon. She was annoyed with her brother, which, to be fair, wasn't uncommon. Sibling stuff. He was supposed to take the dog out that morning and didn't. Simple enough, right? But it had been a long week. She had errands to run, and she didn't feel like doing one more thing because he forgot. So she leashed up the dog herself and took the elevator down to the lobby of their apartment building. Nothing weird, nothing out of place. She was still mentally going through her grocery list when she stepped outside into the sun. And there he was, her brother. He was standing just outside, near the parking lot, and he wasn't alone. He had a friend with him, a guy she didn't recognize. They were just hanging around, chatting like nothing was off. This is where it started to feel strange. She was still mad, so she didn't say hello like she usually would. But he came over and said, "Hey, can I have the house keys?" She remembers this clearly. Not the way people remember dreams or secondhand stories, but in that crystal clear way you remember small things that don't feel right in the moment. She snapped back. "No, you didn't walk the dog like you were supposed to." He shrugged. "I'm just thirsty. I want to go back up and grab something." She turned and walked away. That was it. That was the whole interaction. Just a brother being kind of lazy, a sister being mad, and a dog tugging at the leash, eager to get on with the walk. No lightning from the sky, no dramatic shift in the air, just ordinary, until she came back home. He wasn't there. She looked in his room. Nothing. Kitchen, empty. She even texted him something short like, "Where'd you go?" But there was no reply. And then her phone rang. It was a hospital. Her brother had been brought in with a serious asthma attack. One bad enough that he'd passed out and had to be taken in an ambulance. He wanted someone to come sit with him while they monitored him for a few hours. He was scared, and she was the first person they called. At first, she thought they must be mistaken, but they weren't. They confirmed his name, his ID, everything. And the kicker? He had been there for over an hour. The exact time she ran into him, the version of him that had been asking for her keys and hanging out with some stranger. He was already lying in a hospital bed, hooked up to a breathing machine. She went completely still. "That doesn't make sense," she said. "I saw him. I talked to him. I remember her telling me about it that night." She was pale, quiet, not scared, exactly, but deeply unsettled. Not by what she saw, but by what could have happened. What if she'd handed over the keys? Would they have just dropped through his hand? She asked. Would he have disappeared? Or would that thing have gone into our apartment, pretending to be him? What was it even doing there? That last question is the one that keeps her up sometimes. Because let's be honest, it wasn't just some momentary vision. This wasn't a flicker in the corner of her eye or a face in a dream. She had a conversation. She looked at him, saw the expression on his face, watched him roll his eyes and act like it was no big deal. The friend beside him didn't speak, but he was real. They were real, except they weren't. We tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a mix-up. Maybe she was mistaken. Maybe the guy just looked like her brother, and she was distracted and didn't really focus. But she shut that down fast. No, I know my brother. I know how he walks, the way he talks, the way he scratches his jaw when he's trying to act innocent. It was him. There are old stories, you know, doppelgangers, double-goers. Seeing someone's double has always been considered an omen. Sometimes of death, sometimes of sickness, sometimes just a warning. They appear in quiet places, on staircases, in doorways, in the moments between something beginning and something ending. The fact that she saw his double just before learning he was in the hospital, that gets under your skin. It makes you wonder what the purpose was. Why that moment? Why that request? Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was just a weird trick of the brain, a coincidence wrapped in confusion. But my wife doesn't believe that. And honestly, I don't either. Somewhere in that moment, that interaction by the parking lot, she was tested. She was given a choice. Hand over the keys or not. She chose not to, and nothing happened. The world kept spinning. Her brother recovered. Life went on. But the questions still sit in the back of our minds, humming quietly. What if she hadn't walked away? What if she'd said yes? And most chilling of all, what did it want the keys for? You've made it through the hour. The stories are over now, and the night is quiet again. Let the silence soothe you. Whatever followed you from the tales, leave it here. You're safe. You're calm. And you're already drifting deeper into rest. If you enjoyed these stories, consider subscribing to Dark Reddit for more nightly chills. Until next time, sleep well.